Good morning, everybody. So I thought what we would do today is start the session by doing stick, which takes about 15 minutes or so. And then I want to introduce you to one of our old faculty members from back in the day when we had a school in San Francisco. His name is Michael Dorgan. And Michael is a pretty advanced martial artist, a lot of experience in many different martial arts. And he eventually became a personal, direct disciple of Grandmaster Feng. And that happened because Michael was a newspaper reporter. He worked for the McClatchy News, which at that time owned many papers, but one of the papers it owned was the San Jose Mercury News. And Michael jumped on the chance. He was a international correspondent, so he was all over the world for 30 years or so. And he jumped on the chance to become the Beijing, China correspondent for the San Jose Mercury News. And he moved to Beijing for about 5 years and got an introduction to Master Feng and became a personal student for about 5 years. That's an extraordinary opportunity. And what I want to do is read you just a little material from his martial arts autobiography, including his Dantian Awakening. And I want to do that because his Dantian Awakening was very similar to most people's. It kind of happens, you don't really understand what it is or what's going on, but as it develops, and if you're working with a good teacher, that teacher can lead you along to what it really means. Anyway, it's an interesting story. So you all are going to sit down, and I'm going to read you a little story here. All right? But let's start with some stick work. And the other side. Lee circles. And reverse. And shoe circles. And reverse. And pink circles. And reverse. and block. Okay, you can put away your sticks.
Make sure if I can hear you, honey.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll change the thing, and then we'll do testing. So, guys, this is a picture of Michael Dorgan. This is his martial arts, actually his life memoirs, just published a couple of years ago. It's a fairly thick book. It's actually quite a good read. I recommend it. Kevin has read it too and gives it a thumbs up. And I'm going to do a little reading. It's actually several pages from this. But the reason I want to do this is I want you all to start paying attention to the Dan Chen all the time. So this is a description of, well, what we're going to focus on is his description of his Dan Chen awakening. That is a process that takes a number of years to happen. And it can happen spontaneously. It does happen spontaneously to people, but it also happens through focused practice. And believe it or not, that's something that could happen for any of you. It does not matter how young or how old you are. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. It doesn't matter where in the world you came from or what language you speak. It's something that can happen. It is not the end of anything. It's the beginning of something. And so we're actually gonna end this reading on a phrase that describes what it actually is. When your Dan Chen is open, what have you achieved, or rather, what has been achieved? This is not something you can make happen. It's much more like gardening. Nobody makes a garden happen. You just create the circumstances in which the garden itself can happen on its own. It's very much like that. Maybe a way to phrase it is it's really getting back in touch with your animal body. And when you do, as you go through that process, you'll begin to discover how much we have lost by becoming civilized, right?
Domesticated.
Domesticated. I would not want to give up civilization or even domestication, but it's nice to have two legs instead of just one. So I'm just going to kind of ramble through this. It'll probably take about half an hour, and then we're going to do a couple of exercises. There are levels and levels and levels of developing your Dan Chen, which is kind of shorthand for developing your energy body. we're going to do an exercise for the very basic level. And this is why I say it doesn't matter how young or old you are. You don't have to be a great athlete. It doesn't matter. Anyone can do this, particularly at the fundamental level. Because at the fundamental level, right, it's done in meditation. You don't have to be an Olympic athlete at age 18 to do this. All right. Now, certain levels and the martial levels, yeah, you probably better off being younger. But there are many, many different ways to explore this, and in my opinion, it's well worth exploring. When we do any of our classes or exercises, that's what I'm working on all the time. And I'm going to suggest to you guys that it might be something you might want to work on too. So, Annie and I are going to fool with the microphone here for a second. And then I will try to read this without coughing. Okay. So, Annie, why don't you hand me that microphone? Okay, can you all hear me clearly? Yes? Good. Okay, the first thing I want to do is show you some pictures so you know who Michael is and what we're talking about here. So let's do a share. And see if we can find. I'm going to start with Chapter 8 of the Tao Te Ching. And the reason I'm doing that is to get the title of Michael's book. The title of Michael's book is No Fight, No Blame. And that is the last line of Chapter 8 of the Tao Te Ching. The highest good is like water. Water gives life to the 10,000 things and does not strive. It flows in places men reject, and so is like the Tao. In dwelling, be close to the land. In meditation, go deep in the heart. In dealing with others, be gentle and kind. In speech, be true. In ruling, be just. In daily life, be competent. In action, be aware of the time and the season. No fight, no blame. And notice in that phrase, no fight, no blame, there's a colon after the word fight. It's not just two separate phrases. It's no fight, therefore no blame. And this is Michael's book on Amazon, and I'll send you all a link to this. It's
There's no picture on the screen.
There's no picture?
No.
How can there be no picture?
I don't think you hit the share button at the bottom.
At the bottom?
At the place where you do the share.
Yes.
You didn't share it. See at the bottom?
Yeah.
Share.
Okay.
You didn't hit that button.
All right. I guess I didn't hit it. Can you see it now, Kevin?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So anyway, this is the Amazon page, and I'll put a link in here, if you're looking for a decent read. This is very interesting. Michael's led a very adventurous life, as you're going to discover. But it's also interesting because you can learn a tremendous amount about China and about the background of this particular martial art that we're involved with here. And then let me give you just, this is a horrible video, but this is from CCTV, which is the official channel in China. And this is Michael practicing with Grandmaster Feng.
哎，我太强了，不是没走开。OK， 这手，你看，你看在这，一手就开了，哎，就这一个，你得有一个抖，啪，哎，操，哎，不要太紧了，那就这样行，哎对，不要在这儿了，
太极拳与形意八卦统称为中国传统武术的内家拳。内家拳讲究的是内外合一，以内带外。内就是以丹田为核心，气沉丹田是根本。龙麦克虽然讲不了几句中文，但是对丹田也有自己的理解。
丹田, well, that is also called the sea of qi, and it's a point that is.
丹田也叫气海，而且它是在我们身体。
So unfortunately, the entire rest of this interview is in Chinese, so I'm going to go ahead and skip this. But let me get Michael's website here. So this is Michael's website. I'm not sure whether he still practices or not. He has some health issues he's dealing with. But let's look at one or two of the videos here. So this is a video of Michael with Chen Shang, who is one of Grandmaster Feng's disciples, and they are using the short sticks just like we use, only this is. So this would be an interesting form to learn, but I'm afraid.
We don't have the space, honey.
What, honey?
We don't have enough room.
We don't have enough room to do it, that's right.
Have to be outside.
Okay, what happened to his website? Okay. These are pictures of Michael when he was younger and practicing with George Shu when George Shu was much younger too. And as you can see, Michael was quite athletic and did a lot of different martial arts before he got into Tai Chi. And let us look at the home page here. I'm not even sure how to find this. So here is Michael today. Michael is suffering from a form of incurable cancer, and it is under control at the moment, but you can see he's quite a bit older. Michael was a faculty member at our school in San Francisco. Anyway, life goes on, right? So let's do a little reading here. So let me put my specs on. And this reading is going to be about 20 minutes, so make yourself comfortable.
We find a picture to put up, honey. Otherwise, it's just gonna be on me the whole time.
All right, Annie wants a picture, so let me find a picture here.
Yeah, there you go, honey.
Well, okay, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, is my voice clear? Kevin, is my voice clear?
Yes, it is.
Is it too loud, too soft?
That's fine on mine.
Okay, this is from page 232 of the book. The Beijing Wushu team's visit was a big event for San Francisco's martial artists, who hosted a large welcoming banquet in Chinatown that I attended with Master George Hsu and a group of his students. What I didn't know at the time was that some Chinatown martial arts teachers invited Master Feng to meet with them privately for a quote-unquote exchange of skills. Most taught hard styles and doubted Tai Chi's effectiveness in a fight. Feng quickly dispelled their doubts, according to Wing Chun master Kenneth Chung. Chung, one of San Francisco's most prominent teachers, did not attend the session with the Chinatown masters, but upon learning the outcome, he was eager to test Feng's skills himself. A big man with a powerful punch, Chung grew up in Hong Kong and trained under the first disciple of the famed Ip Man. He was confident of his skills when he arranged an introduction and went to Feng's hotel. There, he told me, Feng greeted him warmly and then invited him to attack. Chung did, and immediately found himself face down on the floor. Years later, Chung shook his head in amazement as he recalled Feng's ability to use sensitivity and softness to instantly neutralize an incoming force. I'd never felt anything quite like that, he told me. The U.S. visit by Feng and the Beijing Wushu team helped open America's doors to Tai Chi. San Francisco was the leading center of Chinese martial arts in the United States, and once teachers there became convinced Tai Chi was a formidable martial art as well as a health exercise, some began to study and teach it. They and their students helped spread Tai Chi throughout the United States. Back in China, Feng at that point could have cashed in on his fame and taken a permanent seat at the banquet table reserved for the nation's quote-unquote living treasures. He was a board member of the China Wushu Association, advisor to the Beijing Wushu Association, chairman of the Beijing Chen-style Tai Chi Quan Research Association, and president of Zhixiang Wushu Academy. He also had published many books, released a popular series of training DVDs, and had been featured on the covers of numerous martial arts magazines in China, the United States, and Japan. But instead of pursuing wealth and glory, he set out to share with the world the martial arts knowledge that had traditionally been closely held and not widely taught. Even some of his top students urged him to not publicly teach the traditional secrets. They argued it would diminish both the value of that knowledge and Feng's standing as a famous master of a mysterious art. But Feng believed it was time for Tai Chi to play a bigger role in society. While self-defense is an important benefit of the art, he told me, that is not its purpose. Feng believed Tai Chi could improve the world one person at a time by making them more healthy, physically, mentally, and spiritually. He described the art as, quote-unquote, the small Tao that can lead to the big Tao. His way of saying that Tai Chi is a path to understanding the true nature of the universe. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead here after that introduction. And I should have said right at the beginning, there's some folks here you should know about. Of course, Grandmaster Feng. Grandmaster Feng's earliest great disciple was Zhang Shuixin. And Zhang Shuixin eventually moved to the United States, and I ended up working with him for 20 years. His later great disciple was Chen Shang, and we're going to meet Chen Shang in the reading here. Anyway, I'm skipping ahead now to 258. In early 2001, Grandmaster Feng accepted me as a disciple, formally initiating me into the lineage of Chen-style Tai Chi and Hunyan Tai Chi. At the ceremony, I bowed to him 3 times and vowed to conduct myself honorably. He pledged to share with me the essence of Tai Chi. Among those in attendance was Master Chen Shang, who formally became my Gong Fu brother, though I would continue to revere him as a teacher. Traditionally, becoming an indoor student meant you were taught the secrets of the style. Now, thanks to teachers like Feng, most of the once closely held teachings had been made public in workshops, books, and videos. It remained meaningful to become a disciple, however, because that special relationship gave students greater access to the master's personal guidance, without which the quote-unquote secrets have limited value. Also, as one of Gong Fu's old tigers, Feng was wily enough to have reserved a few things for himself and his inner circle. Teachings Feng didn't share widely included 2 special forms. While instructing me in those one morning in Tiantan Park, he abruptly stopped when he noticed a man watching us from about 50 yards away. Feng led me to another spot in the vast park and resumed teaching. When he noticed the same man peeking at us from behind a tree, he again stopped teaching and led me to still another location. Feng never offered an explanation, but obviously was trying to thwart what he saw as Gong Fu espionage. I'm pronouncing it Gong Fu, which is the Chinese pronunciation. In the United States, we call it Kung Fu. It's Gong Fu. Becoming Feng's indoor student felt profoundly meaningful for me, not only because he was a great martial artist, but also because he embodied personal qualities I admired. He was smart, kind, generous, honest, witty, and utterly unpretentious. His lack of vanity was on display one day when out-of-town visitors invited him and a few of his senior students to a banquet at a fancy seafood restaurant. I arrived ahead of Feng and waited near the door with a couple of other guests as rain pounded down outside. Feng arrived with a white plastic bag tied around one foot and a red plastic bag tied around the other to protect his humble cloth shoes. Thus shod, he stepped into one of Beijing's swankiest restaurants without a hint of self-consciousness. That is a great story about Feng, and it's absolutely true. Okay, let's go on. Michael was a very active foreign correspondent for McClatchy News. And right after 2001, which some of you may remember, there was a lot of trouble in Pakistan, including correspondent Daniel Pearl being murdered by jihadis there, in fact beheaded. And Daniel Pearl went to a meeting that Michael was actually scheduled to go to, but because of a conflict he couldn't go, so Pearl went instead, and he never returned. Anyway, this remembrance is from that time. Of the more than 20 countries I'd filed stories from as a reporter, Pakistan felt the most threatening. Even if I set aside for the moment, no easy feat, that it was on the brink of a nuclear war with India, Pakistan felt dangerous in a personal way. In most places where I'd felt at risk, the danger was that I'd become collateral damage. In Pakistan, I felt like a potential target, because the country was a breeding ground for anti-American Islamic terrorists. The only education many students could afford was indoctrination in religious schools called madrasas that were funded largely by wealthy Saudi Arabians to promote the Islamic fundamentalism that hailed Osama bin Laden as a hero. Even Pakistan's military forces and intelligence agencies were havens for extremists. While the warnings from Daniel Pearl's kidnappers lurked in the back of my mind, I had more urgent concerns than vengeful jihadis. Tensions between Pakistan and India had reached a boiling point, and the entire region was at risk of nuclear annihilation. As a journalist, I had sometimes boasted of having a front row seat to history. This showdown seemed to be heading toward a climax I did not want to witness. Just the thought of Pakistan having nuclear weapons alarmed me when I visited the headquarters of its weapons oversight bureaucracy for an interview. I noticed thick tangles of cables and electric wires dangling from the ceiling in the main corridor. How could a country that can't keep its lights on manage nuclear weapons safely, I wondered. Not that a nuclear accident was then high on anyone's list of worries. The foremost fear was a deliberate launch. Because Pakistan's conventional forces were smaller and weaker than India's, its military would be under pressure to resort to a nuclear strike if the border skirmishes erupted into an all-out war. President Pervez Musharraf had refused to match India's pledge to not use nuclear weapons first, adding to fears that the world might soon see its first nuclear exchange. Sources told me even Pakistani field commanders had authority to launch a nuclear strike. I had checked into Islamabad's Marriott Hotel, favored by foreign journalists and diplomats because it had thick concrete blast barriers and armed guards. Those security measures would prove inadequate a few years later when a suicide bomber set off a dump truck full of explosives that completely destroyed the hotel, killing at least 54 people and injuring nearly 300. At the time, though, the Marriott was an air-conditioned refuge in a city smothered by summer heat and braced for war. Late one night, I strolled out from my room to an outdoor patio area of the hotel to practice Tai Chi. I needed to clear my head after a long day of interviews with Pakistani military officials, some of whom were not merely resigned to war, but eager for it to happen. It was past midnight, but the muggy air pressed against my skin like a hot, damp blanket. As I began the slow movements of a form, they felt different. My body was more agile and balanced, my motions more fluid. Every movement flowed from my middle dantian with a liquid quality that effortlessly delivered energy to the part of my body that was the focal point of the technique. I felt light but strong. My mind was calm and intensely alert. I was acutely aware not only of my movements, but of everything around me in a way not linked to my normal senses. My heightened state diminished a few minutes later when my thinking mind began to ask, "What is going on?" I had no answer. Had all the tension in my body melted into the warm, humid air? Had thoughts of nuclear war and vengeful jihadis so overloaded my brain that it underwent some kind of reset or self-cleaning? Whatever had made my Tai Chi different didn't entirely disappear. As I continued to practice, I could feel a residue from those magical minutes. Something had changed. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I returned to my room. Notebooks and documents littered the desk and bed, reminding me why I was here. Trying to reconcile my journalism with my martial arts sometimes made me feel like a physicist trying to connect the cosmic with the subatomic. I dwelt in two realms with different laws and logic and had no unified theory to explain their relationship. I just knew they were both essential to my life and linked in ways I didn't fully understand. And then I'm going to read a couple of pages from the next chapter. After India and Pakistan took a half step back from the brink, I returned to Beijing. A few days later, I went to Xinglong Park to train with Master Chen Shang. I didn't mention my Tai Chi breakthrough in Islamabad, and he didn't mention noticing anything different in my movement. But a couple of days later, I went to Ditan Park, where Grandmaster Feng Zhishang greeted me with a thumbs-up gesture and a smile. Chen Shang told me, "Your chi has dropped down to your Dan Chen," he said. Only then did I grasp what had happened that humid night in Islamabad. Tai Chi theory says vital energy from the upper body can flow into the middle dantian like water into a pond when you are erect and relaxed and when your mind is intent and is focused there. From that central point, the energy can then be directed to any part of the body. Accumulation of qi in the middle dantian is slow and incremental, typically requiring a long period of training. But it's a gradual and often unnoticeable process that can lead to sudden and dramatic change. Like water heating in a kettle, not much seems to happen until it boils. Not all energy drains from the upper body, of course, but during standing meditation, I now often felt that downward flow of energy into my dantian. Once qi descends into the dantian, it begins to accumulate. Over time, my mind's eye could see a dim glow there during meditation, like a lamp seen through a thin curtain. As the energy grew more dense, it began to move on its own, first within the dantian and then throughout my body. I sometimes felt a warm churning or spiraling sensation, but the touches of qi could change from day to day. My martial goal was to direct that energy through mind, intent, and movement to whatever part of my body was the focal point of a technique. Strengthening that process required ever deeper relaxation of my body and quieting of my mind. Let me read that sentence again. Strengthening that process required ever deeper relaxation of my body and quieting of my mind. Slowly, I was moving toward a more advanced stage in which qi permeates the entire body and flows unobstructed to where the mind directs. It can then generate the bellows-like cycle of gathering and releasing that is the true source of Tai Chi power. In the gathering phase, energy and breath are drawn into the body as it opens. There is a feeling of inflating, as if all the body's tissues expand and the spaces widen between the more than 200 bones. In the closing phase, the body slams shut, expelling breath and directing energy to the point of contact. When you open, you should open so big there is nothing outside of you, Master Feng often said. When you close, you should close so small there is nothing inside you. In Tai Chi theory, individuals are microcosms of the universe. Much like the way celestial bodies form by a congealing of cosmic dust, the middle dantian develops from qi that concentrates during the stillness of meditation. That stillness is called Wu Ji, which has often been described as no thing, but not nothing. It's the primordial state. It's the primordial state prior to color, shape, or name, from which all things arise and to which all things eventually return. When the energy in the middle dantian reaches a certain density, there is motion, much like the motion in the Earth's liquid core. With motion comes Taiji, the great polarity that generates yin and yang. Only with movement do yin and yang separate into the opposing but complementary forces that pervade every martial technique of Tai Chi. In the stillness of Wuji, they return again to oneness. While I remained skeptical of the literal truth of Tai Chi's elegant theory, my doubts began to seem less urgent. The sensation of qi gathering and moving within me felt real, and I accepted it as real the way I accepted love as real, even if I couldn't objectively prove its existence. Master Chen Shang sometimes spoke of the thinking mind and the knowing mind, which he believed to be based in different parts of the brain. Those two aspects of mind don't necessarily contradict each other, though they can be difficult to reconcile. While my thinking mind dominated my work in journalism, my knowing mind was the key to my progress in the martial arts. A few days after Feng commented on my qi dropping to my middle dantian, I had a training session with Chen Shang in which we talked about my breakthrough. He nodded knowingly when I described how I now more clearly felt qi moving from my middle dantian. "You're inside the door," he said. "You're inside the door." He didn't elaborate, leaving me to wonder, door of what? I imagined a mansion of dimly lit rooms. It had taken me years of training just to get inside. Now what? More of the same, it turned out. Confucius spoke of finding the new within the old, which describes much of the training in the martial arts. As you practice the same forms and drills over and over and over and over, your movements become more refined and your understanding deepens. The old becomes the new. Okay. Let's stop the share.
That was wonderful. I really appreciate hearing that all again.
Well, we have it recorded so everybody can watch it. When you read or listen about somebody's personal experience, it makes it real. This stuff is real. I know it sounds a little woo-woo, but it's not. It really, truly is real. And you could tell Michael's a very experienced person in life or death situations. And yet his own reaction to his Dantian awakening, he didn't really realize what it was. And Michael's no slouch. He studied many martial arts long before he got to Tai Chi. So he was not in any sense a beginner. But when these things begin to happen, you sort of, it's different. It's different from something you hear, even from your own master, because it's you. It's happening in you. And if you pay attention, these things can begin to happen in anyone, at any age. You don't have to study Tai Chi or any of the other martial arts as a martial art. You can study them as a health art and an art of personal development. It all works. It all works, and it can work for anyone. And your interaction with these traditions is very individual. For some people, you've got to work at this for 20 years. You've got to work hard. For other people, it happens in 2 weeks. And you would have to know the people really intimately to begin to understand why there is that difference. But I'll tell you what it is for Michael, and he sort of hints at it in his book. When he first got to Beijing and began to work with Master Feng, he asked him, could you give me some advice? What should I do to to best promote my own development in the martial arts. And Master Feng looked at him and said, relax more. Relax. 5 years later, when he was getting ready to come back to the United States, he asked Master Feng the same question. What should I do to continue my martial arts development? And Master Feng said, relax more. Right? Michael is a hardwired kind of guy, and it's taken him most of his life to learn to truly begin to relax. Think about that phrase, that little sentence I read twice. To do this kind of development, what is required is a kind of very deep internal relaxation and a quieting of the mind. And that sounds so simple. It sounds so simple, but it's not. Something Annie has said many times, and I think it's true. If you had to put into one sentence what all this practice is about, including all the movement, what's it all about? It's about learning to stop. 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 Relax. Truly stop. Stop. And in that quietness, you begin to understand things about yourself and see parts of yourself that maybe have just gone over your head for 70 years.
You're in the knowing part of it.
You're in the knowing mind. Right? Let's do a couple of exercises for Dantian development. I don't think we're going to do a later class because I've gotten some emails that Catherine can't be here, etc. Let's do a couple simple little exercises.
Can you move your microphone back where it was? So I met Michael, and he never seemed to me like a super relaxed person.
No.
I can't imagine what he was like before he found his Dantian.
He was wired.
I consider myself pretty lucky to all the people that through you I've met, George Shu and Master Zhang and Chen Shang and Michael Dorgan. And yeah, it's never thought I would do that.
That's a really important thing, Kevin. I mean, we're talking about principles and of course Michael's life story, but I cannot tell you how strongly I believe in this. Tai Chi is about people. Tai Chi does not exist without the people. It's not a tradition in a book or on tapes or anything. It's a living tradition. And the truth is, it can only really be passed down person to person. Now we're all on a Zoom call, so there's some problems with that because we're somewhat restricted. However, I am beaming my chi at all of you. As Master Zhang used to say, I give you chi. All right? Okay, let's do a couple of exercises. And if you gotta go, go ahead and go. You can just check in on the recordings later. Remember, I said there are different levels to development. Of course, it's like developing any art. You're going to be a beginner, and then you're going to be an intermediate, and then you're going to be advanced. So let's do a beginning exercise, and then we'll do a more advanced exercise. But I think you can get something out of both of them. And we're going to do the first exercise is going to be from meditation, and the second exercise is going to be from push hands. So it's a much higher level. Now that doesn't mean It's a higher level, and it's better. It's just in the sequence, in the training sequence. The fundamental level is the most important level. All right. So this exercise is going to sound very, very simple, and it is an exercise that will only really reap results if you do it every day for a couple of years. But you'll get the idea from this too. So look around your room where you are and pick something in your room. It can be a chair, it can be a painting, it can be anything. Doesn't matter what it is. All right? Just get that and hold that image in your mind. All right? Go ahead and close your eyes. Meditate. Hold that image in your mind. And now lower that image to your belly button, right in front. That's the doorway to the Dantian. And now move that image back into the body, in the middle of the body. That's the Dantian proper.
Oh.
And then move it backward even further into the Mingmen acupuncture point. And now from the Mingmen acupuncture point, move it forward into the Dantian again, and then backward into the Mingmen, and then forward into the Dantian, and backward into the Mingmen, and forward into the Dantian, and let it rest there, and keep your mind on the Dantian. Okay, and rest. Now, if you were really doing this practice, you might spend an hour doing that every morning for the next year. But we're just going to kind of talk about it so you understand that it's there, and this is the kind of thing you do. Now, I heard you say, oh,
Oh, well.
why?
Yeah, well, when I first dropped it in there and then moved it, that's
Yes.
when it was like boom.
Boom.
Yes, I could really feel.
What did it feel like? How would you
It
describe
felt like an expansion
Yeah,
of my consciousness,
yeah.
in to incorporate more of my body. That's what it felt like. It's like boom.
Yeah. So Annie had never done this exercise before, but that's a perfect description. This is what happened for her. What happened for you may be different. All right. But something will probably happen if you do this exercise. And this is one of the exercises Grandmaster Hu Yaoqian taught Grandmaster Feng Shishang when Feng Shishang was young and was a student of Hu Yaoqian. And he did that every morning for, I think, 3 years. And then they did some other exercises too. What is the purpose of an exercise like that? It's the point about picking something in the room and then bringing it into the mind, lowering it to the Dantian, moving it back and forward. Of course, it doesn't matter what you pick. You can pick anything. What you're doing is moving your mind within your body
Yeah.
in a very simple process, but what you're gradually doing is bringing your mind and your energy body together.
Yeah, yeah.
There are all kinds of other practices you could do and should do, but that's the basic idea. It's very simple. And you think, well, then why do you have to do it every morning for 3 years? Well,
Pump your muscle up.
why do you have to do weights every morning in the gym? Why do you
build your muscle?
Why do you have to play finger exercises on a keyboard when you're learning to play the piano? because you're developing the facility within the body to really do this. It's not a head trip. It's a whole body trip. It's a whole being trip. Okay, let's do one more exercise. This is from a quote-unquote higher level. How can I say? What we just did is a very fundamental level. So in a lot of ways, it's the highest level. But it's done very, very quietly in meditation. So you're not, or if you're moving, it's very, very minor. It's just relaxing and letting your body sort of shift from foot to foot. And you should do that. Don't hold your body stiffly. Let your body just sort of naturally sway back and forth, do what it wants to do. Let it be comfortable, absolutely comfortable. All right. This next exercise is much more active. And that's really what I mean by being more advanced. You've got to do this stuff and be more active. I pick on this exercise because it was a really important exercise for me. Back in the day, when I was in Master Zhang's class, we always did a lot of push hands, and most of the push hands were just two-person drills. So it was much more like, learning, it was like being in an orchestra and learning to synchronize your music with the music of the orchestra or music of a partner. But sometimes it was competitive, especially sort of after the class, the guys would do a little competitive push hands. And there was a guy, Kevin, I don't know whether you knew him, John Ho. John was about this tall, and he was built like a
and he was funny.
Hydrant. He was very funny.
He was
very charming with the ladies.
Oh my goodness.
He was one of those guys who was generally charming.
His energy body would greet you way before he got there.
He was a very nice guy, and everybody loved him. But he had a habit of screwing with you when you would do push hands. Now, he had studied Wing Chun for years and years and years, so he was a true martial artist. And so what he would do, and I'm just going to not really do it at all, but when you start push hands, boom, boom, and he would step forward, and then he would bam like this, and he would just whack you hard in the chest. And if he was playing with me, which he usually was, he would hit you hard. Not hard enough to try to crush your chest, but hard enough that it would have knocked you down and over. And this went on for months. And finally, one day after class, I ended up going to Master Zhang's house, where he had a little studio in his garage. The downstairs in his house was the garage. And he said, basically he said, okay, we have to, now I'm translating because this was all in Chinese and very little English, and we sort of just had worked out a way of communicating by that time. And he said, you've got a problem. All right? The problem is when John Ho hits you, this is what you do. Now, I'm going to try to do this very slowly. So Annie is going to be John Ho, and I'm going to be me. And she's going to slowly and lightly hit me, and I'm going to ape what I used to do. All right? So, bunch. And now we're just going to start with the forearms.
Okay.
All right? All right, move your other foot forward. All right. Now, slowly come up and hit my chest.
Oh, so you come into it.
All right?
Yeah.
I would come into it.
Yeah.
All right? In other words, I was raising all my chi to meet his incoming blow. In very advanced Tai Chi, there are ways to do that, but I didn't have that very advanced Tai Chi. So this is what would happen. Now, John was shorter than me, but he wasn't stupid. He knew how to do this, all right? So again, he would come up, bam, no, go ahead and just push, you know,
Okay.
push. Why would that happen? Well, because everything was up here.
You gave him a big handle.
I was ungrounded.
Yeah.
And so because I was so top heavy, I would fall over. And Master Zhang said, you're doing exactly the opposite thing of what you should be doing. All right? Now, I'm telling you this story because this was the biggest single breakthrough I ever had in Tai Chi. And I'm going to show you what the breakthrough was. But it was like pulling that one stick out of the beaver dam and the whole dam falls apart and the river starts flowing. All right? 1,000 other things came from this one thing. And I'm going to show you what Master Zhang said. So I'm going to do this at a little bit of an angle. You come around here and be John again. Okay. All right? So basically what he said was, when someone comes in like this on like here, don't come up, go down. Right? Go down. Lower your chi. Right? Push.
Oh, goodness.
Right? You lower your chi into your Dan Chen. Now, it's a very simple thing. And we're going to do it as an exercise. I'm going to put my Dan Chen on here. You can do this yourself as a simple exercise, and you can learn so much about this tradition and your body with this simple exercise. And it just has to do with the manipulation of the shoulders and the arms. Imagine that someone like John comes out and goes, ah, like that, right? A natural response is to go, ah, right? It's kind of the fright, right? Kind of thing. Oh, you can feel it raises your chi. Try it yourself. Oh, it's very uncomfortable. Why? When you raise your chi like that, it presses your lungs upward and makes it difficult to breathe. It also presses your heart and causes your heart to race. It's difficult for your physiology to do that. And now you're all completely top heavy and you're just sort of, right? It's a perfectly natural response. Try it just the opposite way. Try this yourself. Get this up here, get uncomfortable, and now just roll everything down into the Dan Chen. Oh.
Now you feel grounded.
Now you feel grounded and relaxed. Right? You've opened up room in your torso for your lungs to fill and breathe easily. You've taken the pressure off your heart. You've taken the pressure off your mind. Think about this. Do it yourself and you'll feel it. Oh! What does this do to your mind? Versus, what does that do to your mind? This is not calm. That's not calm. You can feel it. All right? That's calm. This is such a simple little demonstration, but you can play it yourself and you can feel the chi going up and you can feel the chi going down. When you do any of these exercises or you do Tai Chi form, watch this structure up here. It's not this. Relaxed. Relaxed.
Yes, but we want to know What happened the next time you pushed with John?
The next time I pushed with John,
I want to know the expression on his face.
When you'd have to ask John, but when Master Zhang did this, and he did this by pretending that he said you be John Ho, I'll be you, and he did it wrong, and then he did it right, and so this is how we communicated, just by body language. So then I tried it, and of course, bam, immediately I got it, and it immediately changed all my Tai Chi and my Qigong, because I realized this was, for me personally, this was a key. And it's like once you unlock the door, as Chen Shan was saying to Michael Dorgan, you're inside the door. Once you get inside the door, everything's available to you. If you're not inside the door, it's not available. If you are inside the door, it is available. It's about that simple. And you don't have to, I was much younger then, you don't have to be training as a martial artist to get inside the door. All you need to do is pay some attention to your body and your mind as you do these exercises. All right? So when we're doing all these exercises, like this, the worst thing you can do when you do the shoulders is raise your chi. How do you extend your body upward without raising your chi? You use your mind. Very easy to do this wrong. Raise your chi. No. And reverse. So this is a very basic principle, but it's a key to Qigong and to Tai Chi. There are tens of millions of people in China who practice Qigong who do not practice Tai Chi. So they're not exactly the same thing. Almost all Tai Chi players also practice Qigong, but not all Qigong players practice Tai Chi. But the principle still holds. The principle is good in both of these things. Keep your chi down. Well, how do you keep your chi down? Well, there's two ways you could keep your chi down. You could force it down, but that's not relaxing. Or you could just relax. Just relax. Which sounds really simple until John Ho is pushing you in the chest. What happened next time? I was able to handle the situation.
Yeah.
Because I knew what he was going to do.
Yeah.
Now, was he his usual fast self? Yes. But, you just relax. Yeah. And part of the martial training in Tai Chi is to depotentiate shock. So what John Ho was doing, right? See how she was shocked. No, I mean this is part of the training. Now, if I kept doing that, she would eventually just get to the point where she wouldn't react to it. Yeah. It's to depotentiate your shock reaction. so that your mind stays clear instead of getting shocked. Okay, any questions?
Does everybody have a sense of their chi?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
So you can use your mind, and you can connect with your chi and move your chi. You all have that capacity already. Correct? Yes?
I remember years ago, I'll leave you with this story. Years ago, I was pushing hands with Grandmaster Feng. And let me demonstrate, right? So you grab me by the elbows, right? So he would go, okay, so she's me and I'm Feng, right? And so Master Feng would say, I'm not going to fight you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my intention behind you and then walk into it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And you could not stop him. He put his mental intention behind me and then walked into it. And even though he wasn't even using his hands, he was just walking like this, it was like he was a bulldozer. And I was young and strong, all right? Not quite as heavy, but still young and strong. You can do things with your mind and your chi that are quite extraordinary if you work with this. The same is true with using this as a health art and a healing art. You can develop a lot of abilities with this just by relaxing into it, paying attention, reading a little bit. Your friend Barbara Brennan in her books, maybe we can talk about that next week. Anyway, so good. Next week we'll talk about Austin Gunter, who is an old friend and an old student of mine who has some very serious physical disabilities that he's dealing with, but he has gone on and continued his development in Tai Chi and Qigong, and we're going to focus not on the Dan Qian, but on the microcosmic orbit, up the back, down the front, or up the front, down the back. So a related but slightly different point of view. Okay, guys, thank you. Have yourselves a great day. We'll see you next time. Ciao.